Elders, man, big up the women, big up the certain man them, man, get me? I come out in unison. Africa, the diaspora, the police are going like they're leading something, but they're not. But I suppose they do what they gotta do, and we do what we gotta do.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters across the African continent and beyond. As I stand here today, my heart heavy with the weight of questions that have kept me awake through many nights, I find myself drawn once more to the enigma that is Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young leader of Burkina Faso. In a world where leaders rise and fall like shadows in the Sahel sun, Traoré emerged from the dust of a coup in 2022, a 34-year-old captain who dared to whisper, and then shout, the words of sovereignty that echoed the dreams of Thomas Sankara. He promised to reclaim Burkina Faso from the clutches of foreign influence, to build an army not for parades but for protection, to turn the nation's gaze inward and toward its African brothers. And oh, how that vision has stirred souls! Just days ago, he unveiled a bold stroke, scrapping visa fees for all African travelers, a gesture that whispers of unity, of borders dissolving like morning mist, inviting the continent to breathe as one. Is this the dawn of a new era, where the children of Africa move freely, unburdened by the chains of colonial remnants? Yet, as I delve deeper into the currents of his rule, a quiet unease stirs within me. We see the images flooding our screens. Traoré addressing graduates in 2025, urging them to step into the heart of a revolution, their futures woven into the fabric of national rebirth. We hear of military transformations that have left the West shocked, factories humming with the promise of self-reliance, alliances forged with Russia that defy the old imperial scripts. He stands tall in Moscow, not as a supplicant, but as an equal, expelling UN officials who dare to smear his nation's progress with false reports. To many, he is the hero, the continuation of Sankara's fire, a Pan-Africanist who rallies the alliance of Sahel states against the ECOWAS that once sought to isolate him. His recent meeting with Sierra Leone's Julius Maada Bio speaks of dialogue, of regional unity, even as whispers of deeper intentions linger in the air. But is this the full picture? Or are we witnessing moves cloaked in the garb of liberation, disguises that mask something far more intricate? Let us pause and feel the pulse of the Western media's narrative, that unrelenting chorus portraying Traoré as an autocrat in the making. They speak of repression, of disinformation campaigns laced with Russian shadows to solidify power, of a leader who reshapes Burkina Faso not through open hands, but through iron fists hidden in revolutionary rhetoric. Hero to some, they say, but to others, a figure who bans homosexuality with prison and fines, turning personal freedoms into crimes under the banner of cultural preservation. Is this the righteousness of a man fighting neo-colonialism, or the first cracks in an angelic facade, revealing a devil who bends justice to his will? We cheer his takedowns of international hypocrisy, yet in the quiet villages of Burkina Faso, do the people whisper of dissent silenced, of progress bought at the cost of voices muffled? I confess, my soul aches with this duality. Traoré's vision for a strong army and lasting peace feels like a balm for a wounded nation, one that has endured coups and jihadist shadows for too long. His 764 machines transforming agriculture, his students receiving stipends to fuel their dreams, these are not the acts of a mere opportunist. But what if we have been too quick to anoint him the savior? What if the anti-Western fire that warms us is but a veil over ambitions that prioritize power over people? The media's warnings echo like distant thunder. Autocracy disguised as revolution, alliances with Moscow that may one day bind rather than free. Have we failed to see the undercurrents, the reports of repression, the expulsion of critics, the laws that divide as much as they unite? Or is it the West, with its history of toppling African dreams, that paints him villain to preserve their fading influence? Brothers and sisters, I do not claim to hold the truth. I only feel the pull of curiosity, a deep, gnawing wonder that demands we look closer. Is Traoré the angel we hail, wings spread against imperialism? Or does he wear those wings to conceal the horns of control? Have we overlooked the shadows in his light, the costs etched in the lives of his people? The questions burn, unanswered, urging us to seek, to question, to feel the weight of Africa's unfolding story without rushing to judgment. What say you? What have we yet to see? And so, my dear compatriots, as the shadows of doubt lengthen over this unfolding saga, my anxiety deepens like the roots of the baobab, twisting into the soil of uncertainty. We have celebrated Traoré's defiance, his unyielding stand against the old masters, but what if those voices from afar, those generals and presidents across the ocean, hold fragments of a truth we dare not face? Let us turn our gaze now to the glittering curse of gold, that yellow vein running through Burkina Faso's earth, and the whispers that it lines not the nation's coffers, but the pockets of one man. In April of this year, General Michael Langley, the stern-faced commander of the U.S. Africa Command, stood before a Senate hearing and leveled a charge that sent ripples across the continent. Traoré, he claimed, is hoarding the country's precious gold reserves, diverting them not to feed the hungry or arm the defenders, but to shield himself, to fortify his personal empire amid the chaos of jihadist threats. Picture it, the general's words echoing in Washington halls, painting our young captain as a modern-day Midas, whose touch turns national wealth into private armor, leaving the people to scrape by while he builds walls of bullion around his rule. Is this the rot beneath the revolutionary shine? Have we, in our fervor for sovereignty, overlooked the gleam of self-interest? Burkina Faso's government fired back swiftly, denouncing the accusation as a smear from those who once plundered the mines themselves, insisting that the gold fuels nationalization efforts, a sovereign stockpile to break free from foreign brokers who siphon 90% of the profits. Factories rise, infrastructure stirs, yet the doubt lingers. And then, in a twist that knots my stomach further, Langley himself recants, just weeks later in May, during an interview in Kenya, praising Traoré as a good man doing a good job, acknowledging the great things blooming in Burkina Faso. A U-turn born of backlash, or a slip of the tongue revealing deeper intelligence? Was the initial barb a probe, testing the waters of discontent, or does it hint at ledgers we haven't seen? Gold bars stacked not for the collective defense, but for one leader's unyielding grip? My heart races at the thought. If even a fraction holds, what becomes of the Pan-African dream when its champion is stained by avarice? This unease swells as we confront another thunderclap from the West. The words of Donald Trump himself, that towering figure of American resurgence, who has cast Traoré not as a liberator, but as a peril to the very democracy he claims to safeguard. In the swirl of 2025's geopolitical storms, Trump, back in the White House or whispering from its shadows, has reportedly issued veiled ultimatums, demanding submission of vast shares of Burkina Faso's gold and oil resources, framing the junta's rule as a direct assault on democratic norms. He speaks of threats, of a leader who postpones elections indefinitely, citing the specter of terrorism as cover for clinging to power, with no roadmap to the ballot box that once defined Africa's fragile transitions. Traoré promised polls by 2025, a return to civilian rule after quelling the insurgents, but as September dawns, the calendar mocks us. Deadlines drift like desert sands, security decrees extend his mandate, and whispers grow of a permanent military stewardship. Is Trump right, this brash voice from across the Atlantic, in branding such delays a threat? We hail the ousting of corrupt elites, the rejection of Western puppets, but what if this is no mere pause for stability, but a calculated erosion of choice? Reports filter through of media curbs, opposition figures vanishing into the night, laws tightening like a noose around dissent, all in the name of unity against external foes. Yet Traoré's defenders cry foul. Elections under siege would only invite chaos, rigged by the same forces that fueled the coups before. Delegations from Washington arrive, tense meetings unfold, and threats of travel bans or sanctions loom, echoing Trump's hardline stance on regimes that defy the democratic script. My mind reels. Is this the devil's bargain, power hoarded under the guise of protection, or a necessary shield in a world that topples African voices at every turn? If no elections come, if the captain sails on without a vote's compass, do we applaud the strongman, or mourn the democracy we once demanded? And oh, the ache intensifies when we probe the fracture with ECOWAS, that once vibrant union of West African kin, now sundered by Burkina Faso's bold exit alongside Mali and Niger. Why, we must ask, did they turn their backs on this bloc, forged in 1975 to weave economies and fates together, only to declare in January 2024 their intent to withdraw, a decision rippling into 2025 with grace periods extended to July, yet wounds unhealed? The juntas proclaimed it a liberation from betrayal. ECOWAS, they charged, had strayed from its roots, becoming a tool of imperial puppeteers, slapping sanctions after their coups not to restore order, but to prop up French interests and Western agendas. Burkina Faso, reeling from jihadist onslaughts and the ghosts of foreign bases, saw ECOWAS threats of military intervention as the final insult. A regional body more beholden to Abuja's oil giants and Paris's shadows than to the Sahel's cries. They birthed the Alliance of Sahel States in September 2023, a defiant pact for mutual defense and trade, free from what they call neo-colonial meddling. Passports in the works, currencies whispered, borders redrawn not by Brussels but by Ouagadougou's will. Deeper still, the pullout stems from a cauldron of grievances. ECOWAS's failure to stem the tide of insecurity, its silence on resource plundering, the economic stranglehold that funneled Sahel wealth southward while coups were met with isolation rather than solidarity. As of this September, the grace period drags on, markets falter. Food prices spike, trade routes tangle, millions face hungers bite without the blocks buffer. Yet the AES pushes forward, courting Russia and Iran for arms and aid, vowing a confederation by year's end. But is this severance a step toward true autonomy, or a reckless gamble that isolates Burkina Faso further, weakening it against the very threats Traoré vows to crush? ECOWAS scrambles to reinvent, lifting some sanctions in a bid for reconciliation, but the rift exposes fractures. Democratic hypocrisy in the bloc's own ranks, where elections falter elsewhere, and the pull of great powers tearing at regional seams. My soul trembles at the stakes. Nations adrift, alliances fracturing like parched earth. Have we misread the exit as heroism, when it might sow seeds of greater vulnerability? Or is it the painful birth of an Africa unbound? Friends, these questions claw at me, raw and unrelenting, as we stand at this precipice. The gold's shadow, the election's absence, the ECOWAS chasm, they weave a tapestry of fear and hope, demanding we peer deeper still. What truths lie buried? What illusions have we embraced? Speak, reflect, question. For in our shared anxiety, perhaps clarity awaits, though it eludes us yet. Yet, my brothers and sisters, as these shadows of suspicion threaten to eclipse the sun of progress, let us summon the courage to pierce through with the unyielding light of evidence, the testimonies of transformation that pulse through the veins of Burkina Faso. What if the curiosities that gnaw at us are but echoes of a dying empire's desperation, desperate to dim the flame of a leader who dares to serve without the taint of self? Captain Ibrahim Traoré, at 37, stands not as a devil in disguise, but as the upright son of the land, reshaping governance with a hand that builds rather than hoards, a heart that beats for the Faso's people above all else. Let us delve into this truth, layer by layer, feeling the weight of his deeds that defy the smears, though the full dawn of understanding may still unfold before our eyes. Consider first the glittering accusation of gold's misuse, that General Langley's April thunderbolt claiming Traoré diverts the nation's $4 billion reserves to personal fortification, a narrative swiftly retracted in May's softer tones from the same lips, praising the captain's good works. But beyond the flip, what stirs the soul is the reality on the ground. Traoré's bold rewriting of mining laws since 2023, nationalizing key operations and renegotiating contracts with foreign giants who once siphoned 90% of the profits, leaving crumbs for the people. In 2025, this vision crystallized with the launch of Burkina Faso's first state-owned gold refinery in the heart of Ouagadougou, a gleaming fortress set to process 400 tons annually by year's end, capturing value that once fled to European vaults, now fueling local jobs, schools, and defenses against the jihadist storm. Reserves, far from hidden troves, are transparently audited and invested. $500 million channeled into agricultural machinery distribution in May, equipping 10,000 farmers with tractors and harvesters to shatter food import chains. Another tranche bolstering the military's homegrown arsenal, from drones to armored vehicles produced in Bobo Diolasso's new factories. No palaces rise for one man. Instead, gold paves roads like the 300-kilometer axis from Dori to Niger's border, easing trade and binding Sahel kin. If this is hoarding, then what of the old regimes that bled the mines dry? Traoré's hand, clean and resolute, turns the curse of extraction into the blessing of sovereignty, a leader who serves the collective wealth at the cost of imperial ire. And oh, the heart of governance itself, reshaped not in the image of distant puppeteers, but forged in the fire of the people's will. Trump's specter of democratic threat, with elections deferred amid the security maelstrom, overlooks the profound reforms Traoré has etched into the nation's charter. In July 2025, electoral laws were overhauled to limit foreign interference, mandating biometric voter rolls and independent oversight commissions drawn from civil society, ensuring that when polls come, targeted for 2029 under the extended transition, they will not be the rigged farces of yesteryear, but true expressions of Faso's voice. Delve deeper. The July 2nd Council of Ministers decree redrew Burkina Faso's map, birthing 17 new regions and 47 provinces from the old 13, decentralizing power to bring governance closer to the villages, where local assemblies now hold sway over budgets once hoarded in Ouagadougou. Judges shed colonial wigs for indigenous attire, schools ban French as the sole tongue, and a code of ethics binds officials to transparency. Traoré leading by example, slashing his own salary by 30% and those of ministers, reversing the lavish perks of predecessors that fattened elites while famine stalked the land. This is no autocrat's grip, but a revolution in service. Stipends for 50,000 students in 2025, urging them into the revolution's heart, women's cooperatives empowered with microloans from nationalized banks, and a general mobilization decree that rallies every citizen, not through fear, but through shared purpose against insecurity, with volunteer defense units trained in community halls, not barracks. Willing to serve at all costs? Witness his nights in the fields with farmers, his unannounced visits to frontlines, a captain who sleeps little so his people may rest easier. The Western chorus decries delays, yet under the stewardship, Burkina Faso's GDP surged to $22.1 billion by mid-2025, up from $18.8 billion at his ascent, rejecting debt traps that would enslave generations. Now, to the corruption that once gnawed at the nation's soul like termites in sacred wood. Traoré's blade has cut it clean, with no trace staining his rule. Since March 2025, the Presidential Anti-Corruption Unit, a swift task force of auditors and prosecutors, has clawed back over 200 billion FCFA from embezzlers, freezing assets of 150 officials from the old guard and jailing 40 in trials broadcast live for the people's eyes. By July, 5 new courts and 2 prisons dedicated to graft cases rose across the land, their foundations laid by Traoré himself in a ceremony vowing, "No one is above the Faso." Delve into the ethos, a mandatory asset declaration for all public servants, digitized and public on a national portal. Whistleblower protections that have flooded hotlines with tips, unearthing scandals in mining concessions and aid diversion, and the code of ethics that bars nepotism, with Traoré's family barred from any office or contract. In a land where leaders once built empires on public coin, he lives modestly in military quarters, his wealth audited quarterly. Zero traces of personal enrichment, only the glow of a nation reborn. Burkina Faso, declared corruption-free in global indices by mid-2025, stands as testament. This is a leader who sacrifices luxury for legacy, serving the downtrodden at the altar of integrity. Even the ECOWAS rupture, painted as folly, reveals itself as a masterstroke of reclaimed destiny. The January 2025 withdrawal, alongside Mali and Niger in the alliance of Sahel states, severed ties with a bloc that imposed sanctions not for democracy, but to shield French interests. Now, AES forges its own path, with intratrade doubling to 15% of GDP by September, passports in pilot issuance, and a common currency blueprint by year's end. Benefits flow. No more ECOWAS levies draining Sahel coffers southward. Instead, joint military drills crush jihadist enclaves, reclaiming 20% more territory in 2025. And economic pacts with Russia and Turkey flood markets with affordable arms and machinery, unmediated by Abuja's gatekeepers. The grace period's end in July brought no catastrophe, but opportunity. Food security programs shared across borders, youth exchanges fostering unity beyond colonial lines. Traoré's vision? A confederation where Sahel voices lead, not follow, turning isolation's fear into interdependence's strength. My soul, once anxious, now stirs with the rhythm of these truths. Mega projects like the Don Sin International Airport, set for 2025 completion with 1 million passenger capacity, linking Faso to Africa's skies. Solar farms powering 500,000 homes, slashing energy imports by 40%. Cotton yields up 25% from distributed seeds, feeding families and filling silos. He is the leader of the people, reshaping governance into a tapestry of service, unmarred by corruption's shadow. But as we bask in this light, do whispers of deeper tests remain? What horizons yet call? Yet, as we bask in this light, let us turn our eyes to the horizon where the seeds of today bloom into the forests of tomorrow, where the unyielding spirit of Captain Ibrahim Traoré propels Burkina Faso not merely toward survival, but toward supremacy on the world stage. Imagine, my brothers and sisters, a Faso that stands as a beacon, its strides etching giant headlines across global pages. From the halls of the United Nations to the bustling markets of Beijing, commanding the respect long denied to Africa's children. If the people hold fast to this path, unwavering in their unity, Burkina Faso will not just rise. It will soar to world power status, a nation whose gold, grit, and governance redefine the continent's destiny. For in these few short years since 2022, Traoré has ignited a renaissance that shatters the stagnation of so-called democratic eras, which for centuries promised progress yet delivered only chains of debt and dependency. What those regimes failed to achieve: true self-reliance, equitable growth, a people's shield against chaos. He has woven into reality, and still, the momentum builds, layer upon layer of transformation that pulses with promise. Delve with me into the economic miracle unfolding, where the GDP, that vital heartbeat of a nation, has surged under Traoré's vigilant hand. From a modest $18.8 billion at his ascension in 2022, it has climbed to $22.1 billion by mid-2025, a remarkable 18% leap in just 3 years, outpacing the sluggish crawls of predecessors who leaned on foreign loans like crutches. The World Bank, often a stern judge, now nods to 4% growth in 2024 alone, with per capita gains whispering of broader prosperity amid the storms of security challenges. SecBef projections gleam brighter still. An average 8% annual surge from 2025 to 2043, potentially adding $1,000 to each citizen's share, fueled by diversified pillars. Agriculture blooming with mechanized fields, services humming in urban cores, and mining reclaimed for the Faso's future. This is no fleeting spike. It's the fruit of deliberate defiance, rejecting IMF shackles that would have drowned the nation in austerity, instead channeling nationalized gold revenues into sovereign investments that multiply wealth inward. While democratic facades of your squandered billions on elite enclaves and illusory aid, Traoré's blueprint turns every FCFA into tangible tides. Cotton exports up 25%, non-gold mining ventures sprouting like acacias after rain, and a services sector that, by September 2025, employs thousands in tech hubs and tourism circuits linking the Sahel's gems. If the people stay the course, this trajectory catapults Burkina Faso into the league of emerging giants. Headlines blaring, "The Sahel's Silicon Savannah," or "Faso's Fiscal Fortress," respect flowing from skeptics turned admirers. But oh, the depth of this development runs far beyond numbers. It reshapes the very bones of the land through infrastructure that bridges divides and builds dreams. Traoré's vision has unleashed over 20 mega-projects since 2023, each a testament to a leader who serves without pause. The Don-Sin International Airport, now operational by early 2025 with capacity for 1 million passengers yearly, thrusting Ouagadougou onto global airways and slashing travel costs that once isolated the interior. Highways snake across the terrain, 300 kilometers from Dori to the Niger border completed in 2024, easing trade and knitting communities. Solar farms lighting 500,000 homes, cutting energy imports by 40% and powering rural clinics where darkness once reigned. In health, a 5-year odyssey announced in March 2025 vows 55 modern communal hospitals, with a dozen already rising by September, equipped with local labs and staffed by stipend graduates, reversing the brain drain that bled talent under prior regimes. Agriculture, the lifeblood of 80% of Burkinabe, transforms. 10,000 tractors distributed, irrigation canals channeling the Muhound's flow to irrigate 50,000 hectares, yield soaring as famine's shadow recedes. What centuries of democracy left as parched promises, roads crumbling, hospitals hollow, Traoré has forged in steel and stone, still expanding with rail links to Mali and ports via alliances, turning Burkina Faso into a development dynamo that hums with prosperity. And at the core of this ascent lies a military straightened not for conquest, but for unassailable defense, a force reborn from the ashes of foreign dependencies. Traoré, the captain who knows the foxhole's truth, has tripled recruitment to 100,000 troops by 2025, training them in homegrown academies with curricula-blending tactics and patriotism, no longer reliant on Parisian puppets. Equipment surges, factories in Bobo Dioulasso churning out drones and armored vehicles, partnerships with Russia and Turkey delivering artillery without strings, reclaiming 25% of jihadist-held land since 2023 through precision ops that blend tech and terrain knowledge. This is the shield that past governments, mired in corruption and compromise, could not muster. Centuries of coups and incursions met with half measures, leaving borders porous. Now, volunteer defense units empower villages, turning civilians into sentinels. while cyber units thwart disinformation that once sowed discord. Strengthened thus, Burkina Faso's army stands as Africa's vanguard, deterring threats and drawing allies who see in Traoré a brother in arms. Those allies, forged in the crucible of shared sovereignty, elevate this nation to regional titan, weaving a web of prosperity that spans the Sahel. The Alliance of Sahel States, AES, birthed in 2023 with Mali and Niger, solidified into a confederation by July 2024, now boasts a joint military force of 50,000. Joint patrols securing borders and trade routes that have doubled intra-AES commerce to 15% of GDP by September 2025. Withdrawal from ECOWAS in January 2025 was no isolation, but liberation. Passports piloted, a common currency blueprint by year's end, economic pacts flooding markets with affordable goods unhindered by southern gatekeepers. Ties deepen with Russia for arms and expertise, Iran for drones, even outreach to BRICS kin, positioning Faso as a pivot in multipolar tides. What democratic inertia failed to build, enduring partnerships beyond exploitation, Traoré crafts in mere years. Youth exchanges across the AES fostering a new generation of leaders, shared resource pools turning gold and uranium into collective might. This alliance-driven drive propels prosperity, with markets bustling, remittances redirected homeward, and headlines heralding the Sahel's new Silk Road. Brothers and sisters, feel the swell of this trajectory, the GDP's ascent, the infrastructure's embrace, the military's resolve, the allies' solidarity, all threads in a tapestry of development that mocks the centuries of squandered potential. Traoré serves ceaselessly, turning Burkina Faso into a prosperous powerhouse. Yet as these strides quicken, what greater vistas unfold? How far will this fire carry the Faso?